As-Salaamu Alaykum and welcome to Sands of Qurbani Q&A series, the show that gives you some insight into Qurbani. My guest today is Sands of CEO Yasmina Franca and Sands of Head of Fundraising for Western Cape, Ashraf Kenny. As-Salaamu Alaykum, shukran for joining me.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yasmina, there is a popular verse in the Quran that we hear a lot during the period of Qurbani, in Surah Hajj. Could you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Shukran Nazir. So, verse 37 of Surah Hajj specifically refers to Qurbani. It is an ayah that says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it is not their meat nor their blood that reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is their piety that reaches Him. So I think that ayah specifically asks us to reflect upon not just the physical sacrifice of the animal, but to reflect upon what that act actually means. And I think it's important. We've just come out of a period of Ramadan where we achieved a heightened spirituality. And as you know, humans, we do fail in many things, and sometimes your level of piety starts to wane. And so it is beautiful that the period of Qurbani follows that to get us to lift our levels of spirituality again and to reflect on this ayah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us, to reflect on the piety that will reach Him, not just the meat and the blood. So as much as that is very important, and we've covered a lot of the technical aspects, the do's and don'ts, when it comes to the meat and when it comes to the blood. But what we must be mindful of is the piety. What does this act of sacrifice represent? And if we track it back to the life of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and his life and the significance of the sacrifice, it is that complete devotion to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is once again an opportunity for us to reaffirm ourselves to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I mean, very beautifully put. Ashraf, expanding on that, is there anything about the reward that one gets for performing Qurbani?
Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ taught us that for every hair on the animal that is sacrificed, that we will receive reward for every single hair or every single fiber of wool on that particular animal. Now, if you think about an average sized animal that is, has reached the eligible age to be sacrificed, think of the millions or billions even of fibers or hairs on that particular animal. So it's really an opportunity for us to receive multiple rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as Yasmina mentioned, the most important part is the ayah that you quoted in Surah Hajj, verse 37, and the piety, the taqwa that we attain from this particular act. So it's a great opportunity for us as we get once a year.
Shukran. And Sister Yasmina, moving on to a little bit more of the practical side of Qurbani, and we talk a lot about Niyyah. With regards to Qurbani, if I'm performing Qurbani on behalf of a loved one or someone in the family, do I have to say their name before I perform the Qurbani?
Yes, Nazir, it is recommended and it is important when performing Qurbani that the name of the person is mentioned after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is mentioned and after we've glorified Him. So for example, we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar and we say this to Allah, this is from you, for you, on behalf of, and we mention the person's name. So this is from you, for you, on behalf of Nazir, for example, and then the Qurbani is performed, and then when at the end of the Qurbani, we also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the sacrifice on behalf of that person. So we mention the person's name again, and so it is important that we know who the Qurbani is for. And therefore, oftentimes you'll find that when you fill in a form or when you're making niyyah to perform Qurbani, many of those service providers that would be doing the Qurbani for you would ask you the names. But also, even if you're doing it at your home, the imam or whoever is officiating that sacrifice for you will ask the name of the person. And it's also recommended that the person for whom that Qurbani is to be present and to witness the actual flow of the blood, inshallah.
Shukran. And Ashraf, in keeping with that practical side in the build-up to Qurbani, are there any rules or specifications that one must follow as we get closer to the time of the actual Qurban?
I think there's a couple of things that people obviously need to be aware from a specifications perspective. Obviously, the first would be the stipulated time for the Qurbani to be performed, and that would obviously depend on which madhab you follow. For argument's sake, the Shafi madhab, you have until the day of the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, until the waqt of Asr. And then those who follow the Hanafi madhab, they have until Maghrib on the day of the 12th of Dhul Hijjah. So that's one example. Another would be to understand and know the differences between the smaller animals, which would be equivalent to 1 share, and the larger animals that are equivalent to 7 shares. And I think one thing that we don't often speak about is the importance of ensuring that the Qurbani or the sacrifice is performed in the most humane way possible, and ensuring that the animal is not under distress, that the process is done not in a rushed manner, and done in a way that maintains the dignity of that particular animal, and of course in a humane fashion.
Shukran for that, Brother Ashraf. And Sister Yasmina, so I know we've covered previously that the meat of your Qurban cannot be used as wages or payment to someone for any services, but what can I do with the meat? So we've finished the Qurban, what do I do with the meat?
Nazir, it's important to note and it's recommended that the meat can be distributed in 3 parts. So the first part, it is recommended that for your household, so if you've made the sacrifice on behalf of any member of your family or even for the entire household, if you're from the Shafi'i madhab, it is that you then consume 1/3 of the meat. The second third, it is recommended that you share that barakah with your family and friends. And so it's been a tradition. You make these little packets and you share it with your family and your friends and even your neighbors. And the last third it's recommended to share that with those who are in need. And that's a very important aspect, particularly during this time where food insecurity is so high in our country. I don't even want to talk about food inflation. So I think it's important that we consider that in the distribution. 1/3 for your household, for yourself, 1/3 for family and friends, and 1/3 for the needy. And it's also important to know that when you distribute the meat, it should be of such a quality that you yourself would consume, which is why it therefore is important that you take 1/3, because that shows your intent and your willingness to partake in that very meat that you are contributing to family and friends as well as to those who are in need.
Sister Yasmina, Brother Ashraf, shukran so much for joining me today. If you require any more information on Qurbani, be sure to catch us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or visit our website, www.sanzaf.org.za, where you can also purchase a Qurbani online safely and securely. During these holy days, we ask you to believe in the mercies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As-Salaamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.